Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of Talmbout Rasslin, right here on the Black Phoenix Network. I am your host, the untouchable J.R. Atkins, and this is my inexplicable head wrap. Bone Doc Wrestling for those that get it. This is your primary destination for wrestling conversation. Now, first and foremost to the first and foremost. Apologize for the sound. It is apparently yard day at my neighbor's house and they're cutting their yard, which is probably something I need to do as well. However, hopefully it's not too distracting and they'll be done before we're done. If not, we'll power through. Second of all, thank you to everybody who has tuned in to the Black Phoenix Network thus far, whether it be talking about wrestling, whether it be Manifesto Mondays, or even my What's Up Wednesday articles on Substack. Also, this podcast is now available on Spotify. I believe that. Available on Spotify. If you Google, if you search Talking About Wrestling or the Black Phoenix Network, this should come up. The Manifesto Monday episodes will be added soon as well. Season 1 will be added soon. And every episode started, well, really every episode we've done and every episode going forward will be available on Spotify, as well as on YouTube, and of course here at home on Substack. So if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you leave a rating, make sure you follow, comments. I actually don't even know how that goes. I don't listen to most of my podcasts on Spotify, but if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, a like. Make sure you push the algorithm that way. If you're on Substack, make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, make sure you, whatever the equivalent of like, share, subscribe, and comment is, do that. Leave a rating. I know they do ratings. Leave a rating as well. Again, trying to build this up, trying to grow, get bigger, reach more people, expand the audience. Okay, I know sometimes we like to get a hold of things that we like and we don't want to expand it because we want it to be ours exclusively. But in order for it to grow, you got to tell some people, you got to share it to the world. So don't be stingy. That's the word for today. Do not be stingy. Okay, share the wealth with your people. Right. That being said, once again, I am your host, the untouchable J.R. Atkins. I mentioned the head wrap thing, going for a different look. The truth is that my hair needs to be done, and I just haven't done it yet, and it looks kind of bad. I don't want it on camera like that. But we're going for a different look, of course, rocking this is one of my favorite Triple H shirts. Triple H has never necessarily been one of my favorite wrestlers, but his merch and presentation has always been top notch. And this is one of my favorite Triple H shirts from like his I'm not even sure what era it was. I want to say I got this shirt at WrestleMania 25. That sounds right. Or at least around that time frame. Yeah, because I have the gray one as well. I wear that for another show. That he also came around that time. Actually, around the time when he returned originally to face Booker T as the King of Kings. That's how I remember, because I remember the hit. I'm assuming, I think very certainly that's where that shirt comes from. I'm also going to do eventually, now that I'm talking about it, I feel like I should do like a top 5 favorite merch countdown show. I got a couple of countdowns that I'm going to do, so I feel like that should be one too. If you can't tell, we got a lot to talk about because the wrestling world, off of these pay-per-views, but as we're building to new shows, and there still was a show, not one that I watched, but there still was a show, and the wrestling world has been abuzz, has been on fire. Things have been happening. Okay, big things have been happening. So we're going to cover it all. We're going to cover AEW Dynamite as we tend to do every week, which was not the intention, but here we are because we're AEW Shields, right? Well, we're actually going to cover a little bit of NXT as well because NXT had a really big week as well. So we're going to cover that as well and how they both will intertwine this coming Tuesday, actually, not Wednesday. So, first and foremost, let's talk about AEW. building towards the Wrestle Dream. Actually, they're building towards a couple of events. They have a lot of things on the horizon. Probably the first thing that I want to talk about. I was notorious for saying, and I heard somebody else say this, but I agree, and I agreed, but I've been screaming it from the rooftops as well. With all of these things happening with all the women, with the Triangle of Madness, with Aminata, Jamie Hayter, you know, Willow, Harley, Tajay, with all these things happening with the women, I have been screaming from the rooftops that you either have to A, give us women's tag team titles, or B, give us blood and guts. Of course, on last week's Dynamite, Tony announced the creation of the Women's World Tag Team Championships. Bravo. Bravo, right? You did the thing. You did the thing we asked you to do. Tony's good for doing the thing that we asked him to do. So bravo on Tony for that. But then, oh, and I mentioned in last week's show that he mentioned that blood and guts for women was kind of that wasn't really out of the question. He kind of was talking like they would do it next year. Because it's saying like most of the events for this year were already kind of booked up and the seating charts were out. And none of the seating charts showed a setup for blood and guts. So you're thinking, okay, it's out. Right? And then Saturday on Collision, they announced the thing. Not only do we have women's tag team titles coming, but we have women's blood and guts. And listen, I don't know why I did it in Vince's voice, because it probably should have been in William Regal's voice. But he was more the War Games thing, which he said on the Homecoming. And I don't know if that's actually going to be a thing or not. Doesn't matter. Listen, we're eating good, so we're gonna do both. He heard our cry. He said, "Okay, you want one or the other? I'm gonna do both." We eating good. Okay, we eating good as AEW fans. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So we're definitely getting Blood and Guts November. I want to say the date is November 12th, if I'm not mistaken, from North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. That is going to be awesome, making history, double dose of history. And while we didn't get much on the front of either of those things necessarily, with this Dynamite, there were mentions of the tag titles, and they kind of mentioned the blood and guts here and there. But there was nothing in the way of like either introducing a bracket for the tag titles or the teams for blood and guts, which I assume that the bracket for the tag titles won't get established until after blood and guts, I would imagine. However, Tony, you kind of running out of time for the year, man, because he said the tag titles, I felt like he said they'd be decided this year. I don't know if that means that they're going to start the tournament this year or that they're going to finish the tournament this year. I'm not exactly sure what direction or what the time frame is there. If Blood and Guts is in a few weeks in November, well, in like a month's time, a little over a month in November, it's like, do you start the women's title right after that? And then what about the C2? Because I think the C2 is coming this year as well. So are you going to be running the C2 and the women's tag title concurrently? You could. I personally, I know there's no title to do this for necessarily, but I personally think you could do a C2 type thing for the women. That would be dope as well. But that's we can push that off. We're already eating good for the women this year, so that could be a next year thing. Because Blood and Guts typically would have already happened prior to. This is actually pushing it really into the War Games territory for WCW and NXT or WWE, because they typically do both. Typically did War Games in November. I have to fact check that on WCW because I know they usually had it at Fall Brawl, which to me makes sense that it would have been in November, because fall. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It could have been September. I'm not sure. I had to check my timeline on that for my WCW stuff. But I know NXT and WWE ran War Games for Survivor Series and just at the Takeover when it was NXT. So kind of getting into that range, and I'm not sure if NXT or WWE is going to do a War Games match this year. There's room, I guess, with the Vision because the Vision is kind of doing. I know I'm kind of back into place, but we're talking more War Games, and for that matter, Blood and Guts are kind of 1A, 1B, right? Apparently, the stuff with the Vision is taking a very similar temperature to the Bloodline stuff. When it got close to War Games, and it feels that way, beat down, beat down, beat down, beat down. Okay, we're gonna do War Games, and I'm not sure what the teams will be. Right now, we're marching towards Crown Jewel, and I think out of that, we'll probably start talking about if there's going to be a War Games or not. And I'll talk more Survivor Series once we get to the NXT stuff. But back to AEW. So we're getting the women's War Games match. I mentioned the teams before, but there are things happening now that I'm not sure where everybody will fit necessarily. So originally, I believed that Stat would have been in this match, and that there was a chance that maybe Toni Storm would be in this match. I don't think that's the case now. Also, Willow seems to have moved on to something with FTR and Jet Speed. So I wonder if she's going to be involved there, and does that mean she's no longer involved in the in what would be the War Games match? So now, from looking at the teams, I still think it would be 5-on-5. I think you would do the Triangle of Madness, and I keep forgetting what they called them on whatever site that was, but Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. That would be 1-5. And then the other would be Jamie Hayter was in the ring. She's the one that initiated the challenge. Aminata was there with her. So those two are definitely in. I'm wondering if the other three would be Tajay and Harley. Sounds right, maybe. It would be a missed opportunity to not have Willow in this match, though. Instead, and Harley seems a bit disconnected because the two people that she could be considered the most connected to, she's not really right now. But you could also throw Harley in there just because she does have that tie with Anna Jay. So I don't know. She's been tied to Willow. Harley's been tied to Willow. Willow's kind of off doing something else. Harley's been tied to Stat. Stat is doing something else. A couple of other things. And she's been tied to Mercedes, which comes up in Dynamite. And again, Mercedes is doing something else. So Harley may not be involved in the Blood and Guts match. She got hurt when they had like that street fight a few months ago. So maybe they wouldn't want to run that back again. I'm not really sure. I'm just not sure what the direction is there. So I think I know the heel team. I know a majority of the babyface team, but it remains to be seen how that's going to flesh out. So, but we're getting the match, and I'm happy about that. So, really butters my buns. Sidebar: the noise has stopped, at least for now. So, hopefully, it's a little clearer. That being said, but absolutely psyched about us getting War Games. Well, I'm sorry, Blood and Guts, because it's a completely different match. It has the top on the on top of the cage, unlike the WWE version. It's more faithful to the War Games initial War Games rules. at least the aesthetic, right? So I'm happy about that. And I'm happy about the women's tag team title. So we are eating good for the women's division in AEW. Big things are happening. Um, and that's we're not even in the Dynamite because Dynamite kicked off. So this was the 6-year anniversary of AEW Dynamite. There have been it feels amazing. It feels like time has been flying, right? Um, and think of how crazy of a run it's been. AEW Dynamite debuted, like I said, in October of 2019. This October 2nd, 2019. And within 6 or 7 months, the world shut down because of COVID. Brand new show, brand new wrestling company having to shut down because of COVID. That could have killed any other thing, any other entity, any other wrestling company would have been done. Think of how many things ended in COVID. We still can't go to Walmart past 12 o'clock. Or anywhere, really, for that matter. Any store like that isn't open past 12 o'clock. Hadn't been since COVID. AEW still kicking. People wrote it off. COVID will kill it. It won't last a year. It won't last 5 years. How many times people have been predicting the doomsday of AEW? The same way that they predicted the doomsday of TNA. And TNA is still kicking, so I don't know why anybody thought that AEW would be any different. Because they had made half the mistakes that TNA made. And I don't know if people are rooting for the downfall of AEW because of TNA or because I don't know. I don't know if they're WWE homers. I'm not sure what it is. But people have been predicting the downfall of AEW since AEW debuted. Okay? So you all were wrong. You all were wrong. But 6-year anniversary, you kind of wonder what they have in store. They're in Hollywood, Florida, and that's going to come up a little later, but they're in Hollywood, Florida. And they come out the gate. We get a video package of essentially Nick gambling away all of the money that they had won, which we knew would happen eventually. And it just happened. He went to a casino and he just gambled it away. And so they're back to their jobber entrance. They were in the ring already. Justin Roberts does his very monotone, the Young Bucks, as opposed to, his bombastic entrance. And the lower third shows them as the Broke Bucks, which is fantastic. So that leads us to a 6-man with the Bucks and Josh Alexander versus Brodito and Kenny Omega, which is everything that you thought it would be. Everything that you would think it would be. It was absolutely that. Bucks doing Buck things, Brodito doing Brodito things, Josh Alexander doing Josh Alexander things, and of course Kenny Omega being Kenny O effing Mega. Great match. Of course it is. It's if it's one thing that AEW is going to do right, it's the trios match or multi-man match of any sort. That is absolutely going to bang every single time. So great match. Just as far as the action goes, absolutely great match there. But it's more the stuff that happened like afterwards where it really started getting interesting. Right? So after the match, it looks like Kenny and the Bucks are going to bury the hatchet. He's talking to them. They're kind of like, yeah, you might be right. And then Josh Alexander hits the ring, starts attacking Kenny in front of the Bucks. The Bucks are actually kind of trying to pull him off, like, hey, we were talking. Alexander's like, not trying to hear none of that. Meanwhile, out come Jack Perry and Luchasaurus. They attack the Bucks, of course, because that's their thing right now. They attack the Bucks. Kenny gets up, and they dispatch of Josh Alexander. Kenny gets up. Now he's kind of drawn with Jack Perry because remember, one of the last times we saw Kenny before he came back to the ring, he was being attacked by the Elite, which included Okada, the Bucks, and Jack Perry. He's dealt with Okada, dealing with the Bucks. They're still Jack Perry. So it's good that he didn't forget. It wasn't like, oh, okay, we're good. And it's like, nah, bro, I remember how you had me out here stretched on the stretcher, you know what I'm saying, dumping pig guts on me. You know what I'm saying? You were real disrespectful. That's what he said. I saw it. You know. So, of course, Luchasaurus and Jack Perry get back to the Bucks. They're feuding with that. They fight out of the arena. So Kenny delivers this speech, basically the 6-year thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being on the ride. And I felt that personally because I have been along for the ride for the entire time. Okay. And I've loved every second of it. Despite the ups and the downs, I have been here for every second of it. And I've loved every second of it. So Kenny goes and he says, goodbye. Mwah! And good night. Bang! And then the lights go out. So this usually means either a return or a debut. The lights come back on and there's somebody in a long jacket and a black mask that's similar to someone we've seen before. And instead of that person, I thought it was a Swerve. And I said, that's Jericho. That's what I thought. I thought it was Jericho. Because the hair was long. It was kind of dark, though. I guess that should have been the dead giveaway. But it had like some streaks in it. So, all right. And he takes off the mask. And lo and behold, it's Andrade. That's right. That Andrade. Andrade, who was just in WWE like a month ago. Andrade, who had been in AEW like last year, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even the year before, and it just came back like at the Rumble to WWE. Andrade, who punched Sammy Guevara in the face trying to get fired from AEW. The same Andrade who, listen, everybody in wrestling punditry and fandom was like, well, he's not going back to AEW because he burned that bridge. And all the jawing with MJF and stuff was like, okay, well, you know, but he's not going back to AEW because he burned that bridge, right? Well, apparently not. This is why I say, you know, Vince used to have a saying of never say anything can happen in the WWE, in the World Wrestling Federation. It wasn't WWE yet. Anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation. Anything can happen in wrestling, period. Andrade back in AEW is not as surprising as CM Punk going back to WWE. However, CM Punk going back to WWE also made sense because of everything that happened prior. So like CM Punk in AEW, you kind of figured it could and would happen at some point, right? Because you couldn't see him going back to WWE. But him going back to WWE made sense after everything that happened with AEW. It was like, well, of course he'll go back to WWE because, you know, why not? So that is a little different. Because that bridge had been burned for so long, but how he got back there kind of made sense. Andrade's a little different because we just knew. We just knew. It was like, yeah, he's not gonna. I don't know what he's gonna do now, but like maybe we can't go TNA because TNA is pretty much a WWE subsidiary at this point, so not gonna do that. CMLL, baby, but they're attached to AEW, but maybe that's a backdoor way in. I don't know. And Andrade attacks Kenny Omega. First of all, huge shot. what wasn't a shocker, or at least what I should have saw coming, was what happened next is, and then he joins the Don Callis family. Who isn't in the Don Callis family at this point, right? Who isn't? Well, listen. So I hear a lot of people saying like Don Callis family is reaching like NWO levels of members, but these are very different members. Okay, like, and nobody's just there for their sake. You got your three heavy hitters: Okada, Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher, now Andrade. Still got Josh Alexander, who is a top tier talent. You got Murder Hawk Monster, who is, you know, everybody dies, but not really. I guess you still have Wardlow, even though he's injured right now. Trent Beretta, Rocky Romero, Hechicero. Like, they are stacked on stacked. For this, listen, that faction has had the biggest glow up of any faction I think I've ever seen. Because they were big before. He had Takeshita, he had like Will Hobbs at one point, Sammy Guevara at one point. You know, all these people, different people he's had. It's been a revolving door. But this iteration, they have gold. They have numbers. They have some of the most talented wrestlers in the world. This is huge. They are huge. Now, I don't know how much longer Takeshita's there in that group, but because I think he's leaving soon, and the same could possibly be said for Kyle Fletcher. Not soon, but eventually. But as it's currently positioned, as it's currently structured, the Don Callis family is probably the top heel faction, and it's crazy to say because the Death Riders are still around, but like they would engulf the Death Riders if that ever came to be a thing. So, I mean, say what you will, but they are absolutely top faction in AEW right now, hands down. So that was absolutely crazy. Moving on from that, what else did we get? I don't even know if this was it the next match, maybe? Next match, I believe, was Kyle Fletcher versus Orange Cassidy, which was supposed to be Hologram, but it ended up being Orange Cassidy because Hologram was taken out on Collision by Kyle Fletcher and apparently is going to be out for the rest of the year. So we get this Fletcher versus Orange Cassidy match. Of course, it's again. A lot of times with AEW, it's not even worth it to talk about the match quality because the matches are always going to hit. Unless it's like super insane, every time the matches are going to hit. It, you know, it's very rare that you get like a dud on Dynamite or anything really AEW related. So we get of course a great match between those two. The finish comes when Orange Cassidy goes up to the ropes. Hologram comes out. Actually, I want to say Don Callis was on the ropes, was on the apron. Hologram comes out to chase him away. Orange Cassidy is on the top rope. Hologram knocks him off the top rope, allowing Kyle Fletcher to hit a brainbuster on the top rope, which was insane. And of course, what is Hologram doing? Oh my god! And he joins in on a beatdown on Orange Cassidy, which brings out the rest of the conglomeration to uh, get him off of him, basically. Which is then revealed that this isn't Hologram that you know. This is, I don't even know what they're gonna call him. Holoclone, L clone. I think it's gonna be L clone, the clone. I guess that's gonna be the name. That's pretty unique, I guess. Um, so if we're going, so I guess they're gonna just do that while Hologram's out, which is fine. I figured that's what they were gonna do. That makes sense. But then El Clone joins the Don Callis family. Like I said before, I mentioned this online and I mentioned it here too as well. I'm pretty sure Takeshita's leaving. Probably going to be a couple other people that are going to leave because they are getting bloated. They kind of got to balance it out a little bit. So it's going to happen. I don't know exactly how they're going to get there or what they're going to do there. Another member that we haven't seen, that, like, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, Brian Cage, who was injured. I mentioned Wardlow, but Brian Cage as well. There's a bit of redundancy there, right? How long is he going to be out? And when Wardlow comes back, then what? And then you got Lance Archer. One of those three isn't going to be there. If both of them get healthy, one of those three isn't going to be there. Don't. Murder Hawk Monsters makes sense. You have Roppongi or Roppongi Vice or Roppongi 3K. I don't know. I don't even know what they. RPG Vice is what they're calling themselves now. Sorry. So you got RPG Vice, you got Murder Hawk Monster, you got 2 tag teams there. You have the potential to do other tag teams. You got Hechicero and Josh Alexander as a team. Next week they announced that Okada and Takeshita are going to challenge for the tag team titles, which that makes sense towards that story, which I think is going to further push Takeshita leaving. So there's going to be an exodus soon, I imagine. It's just a matter of when. So looking forward to that. But again, Don Callis family, most OP. I don't even know if they're OP in the way that like the Death Riders were, but they're definitely OP. They're definitely OP. So looking forward to see where that goes. Again, Dynamite rolls on. What else we get here? Oh, so I don't know if I mentioned this again last week in my review, but I thought it that we get this 6-man tag with the Death Riders versus Samoa Joe, Will Hobbs, Hangman Adam Page. And out of that, I think I mentioned I didn't know what was next for Hangman. But I knew Hangman wasn't going to be tied up in any Death Rider stuff for the foreseeable future. Moxley tied up with Darby right now. Claudio went way back with that one. Claudio, isn't going to be positioned for a title match because just wouldn't. And Danny Garcia also would not. And it definitely wouldn't be a main event. And I don't even know if that match is going to be the main event for Wrestle Dream. Would have been the main event for Wrestle Dream, but they definitely wouldn't have done that right then. And so I looked at this. I'm like, I wonder if this is going to lead to a thing with Joe. Because I could see that. Well, we get this 6-man tag, and there's a point in the match where like Hobbs is in peril, which seems strange, but Hobbs is in peril, going for the tag. He goes for it, and it looks like Hangman steals the tag from Joe. And Joe kind of like, kind of has a little problem with that, but whatever. They go on to win the match. After the match, Hangman goes to hand Hobbs his title. He goes to hand Joe the title. Joe doesn't go to grab for it, and it just hits the ground. Hangman goes to grab his own title, and he's celebrating. Joe got beef. Joe like, yo, bro, what the hell is all of this? Now, seems like a bit of an overreaction. There are a couple of ways that I think you could look at this. It's like, why is Joe being so overly sensitive here? You know, and it could just be that Joe's just being, Joe, looking at this and saying like, yo, I want smoke. I got smoke, so it's smoke. It's up. All right, it's up with us. Joe just might want a title shot, which leads us to Hangman being like, yo, I don't know. And in the midst of that, Joe kind of said, yo, you never beat me, which I guess is true. So Hangman goes, oh, okay, so this is what it's about. So we get a backstage promo from Hangman saying, well, yo, if that's what you want, all you have to do is say so. I owe you anyway. So boom, Wrestle Dream. Joe, Hangman for the title. It's on. And then Joe, because the promo basically saying, yo, you never beat me, and it's time for me to remind people who I am. All right, it's up. So for Wrestle Dream, we're getting Joe and Hangman. I didn't call it, but I thought it. My wrestling brain, man. I'm just gonna start calling stuff out when I think it. Cause I got a podcast. So I got a mic. I can say what I want to say, right? I should be able to. I'm gonna start doing it. I'm just gonna start calling stuff out. We got a backstage segment, and I don't think this is in the time right now, but I'm just gonna say it when I say it. We got a segment with Mercedes Moné pretty much talking about the TBS championship. She's gonna defend it next week at Title Tuesday, which is also their homecoming, which I haven't mentioned yet, but I'll get to it. Against somebody from Florida. Renee mentions the tag titles, and who makes an appearance? Mercedes like, oh yeah, you know I love gold. So, who's gonna be my tag team partner? I need to find somebody. And who pops in? Puppet Monet. I don't even know if that's the name. Is it Mercedes Puppet? Mercedes Puppet Monet? I don't know. But the puppet is back. The pop is huge. And it's great. And Mercedes is like, aren't you friends with like somebody else right now? Aren't you friends with like everybody right now? Pretty much. So Harley putting her bid in to be Mercedes' partner for the tag team tournament. I wouldn't mind seeing that because I don't think Mercedes could win it. But maybe. I don't think she should be. I think for the same reasons that I thought she wouldn't win the world title, is the same reasons I don't think she should win the tag titles. You need to make those titles prestigious to begin with, and making them just another of Mercedes' belts, especially considering now in AEW, I think would just be not a good move. So I don't think she may be in the tournament. I don't think she wins, whoever her partner is. And again, it could be Harley. Could be Harley. Moving on. We get Toni Storm versus Top Mello. Is it Top Mello now? Is it Ty Guevara? Maybe it's Top Mello. Top Mello. Of course, Toni Storm beats her. It happened. It was a good match, but it just happened. More importantly was Toni Storm calling out Anna Chris Statlander after the match and saying, hey, I'm not done with you. I want you one-on-one at Wrestle Dream. And of course, we get a promo later from Stat accepting the match. I love the direction for Toni Storm that she basically said, I don't know who I am without the title. And so I have to know if you can beat me one-on-one. She looked confused. She looked not disheveled, but just a little out of sorts. And so I like that she's affected by having lost the title. And, like she said, I don't know. Again, I don't know who I am without that title. So love that direction as well. Love to see where that's going to go. They're having a match, like I said, at Wrestle Dream. Wrestle Dream in St. Louis. The card is starting to form, and listen, I said it's in St. Louis, and I might make the drive. I don't know, man. I don't know. I might. Depending on how I feel. It's on a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a Sunday. I would love if it was on a Saturday. I definitely would love that. Then I can come back and not have to miss anything, but maybe on a Sunday. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. Moving on. Moving on. Another thing. I'm glad I saw this. I mentioned that this show was in Hollywood, Florida. And so, of course, Big Pop Forward, Timeless. And then she goes to do this promo and they bring out the what chance? Honestly, I thought we had kind of got over these. I don't know why I thought that, but I feel like we had kind of got past the what chance. I don't feel like I hear them as much. I don't know if they still doing it in WWE as much. They definitely don't do it in AEW often. To pull them out now in that promo of all things, like that's something that, like, listen, Stone Cold did a lot for the business. The what chance may be the worst thing to happen to wrestling promos ever. Very entertaining when it was him. How that stuck and has become a thing 20 plus years later is mind-boggling. Almost 25 years later, because I think that was 2001 during the invasion. So almost 25 years later, 24 years later, still a thing? We're still doing that? There's not a whole lot of other things. I mean, I guess there are other things that stood that test of time, but that one is one that we could have buried a long time ago. It doesn't even hold any meaning. We just do it. We just do it because it almost like we just do it because somebody's talking in the ring. We're not even paying attention. We're just doing it because. Trash. Shame you, Hollywood, Florida. Shame you. Next week should be absolutely better. We also got a match. Quick. It wasn't a squash. They don't really do squashes on Dynamite, but we got the Gates of Agony, GOA versus the Swirl. Of course, Gates of Agony win. More important thing there is after the fact, MVP comes out and says, hey, I lost the match for my team. Maybe that means I lost a step. But what I can do is fight. So let's have a fight. And I wasn't entirely sure. I assume that it's a 3-on-3 fight with the Syndicate versus the Demand. And I assume that's at Wrestle Dream. Now that I'm looking. Let's see when are they gonna do? Did they announce that? I'm looking. Okay, so it's gonna be all right. So it's not gonna be a Wrestle Dream. That match is not gonna be a Wrestle Dream, but they're gonna have a street fight with the Demand versus the Syndicate. Now again, I'm gonna get to all this probably after the fact. Main event was Stat and Darby versus Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta in this tornado tag match, and I guess I didn't know that it was like, now that it made sense that it was that, because in my head I was like, it's just a tag match. Why would that be the main event? It's a tornado tag, and with anything AEW tornado tag ish, that means there are no rules. This was insane in some weird ways. People getting suplexed onto chairs. It wasn't bloody necessarily, but it was violent. Like people getting suplexed on the chairs, on the tables. This was like a chiropractor's dream match because you just know they're coming to see you. Spot of the match. So Wheeler Yuta goes to get thumbtacks. And it's like, oh, okay. That happens. We just saw a lot of thumbtacks at the pay-per-view a couple of weeks ago, but all right, cool. And if you have, here's the thing with thumbtacks, right? They're pretty common fare in wrestling these days. So you tend to have to find ways to make it creative and dramatic. I don't know if I've seen Darby take a coffin drop onto thumbtacks, but that seems like something that would have happened already. But maybe not. He's done it in everything else, so I don't know why he wouldn't have done that, but that seems like something he would have done. So Yuta brings out the thumbtacks. And there's some hustle, there's some bustle. Stat gets in the ring. Marina Shafir gets in the ring. And that's when it clicks that Marina doesn't wear shoes. So you know what happened there. The next thing you know, Marina Shafir goes feet first into the thumbtacks. Listen, sometimes when I sit down too long, okay, my feet go to sleep, my legs go to sleep, especially when I'm at work in the job. My feet go to sleep. And standing up and trying to get that feeling back in my foot, and then that feeling of needles, and you can't put your foot down, and you don't want to. That is excruciating to me sometimes. I can only imagine what getting slammed feet first into thumbtacks feels like. Marina Shafir is a G for that one. Whatever you might think about her in the ring, she a G for that. Let me tell you, because I would have tapped out immediately. Immediately, I'm tapping. Get me out of here. Get me out of here right now. I don't want to do it no more. The finish was pretty cool. There's like this series of things where like Wheeler has powder and somehow ends up, he tries to throw it at like Stat or Darby, but they move and he gets Marina, who's just trying to pull herself up in the corner because she has thumbtacks in her feet. Now she got thumbtacks in her feet, powder in her eye. And then somehow like Yuta goes to hit Darby, but he moves. So he ends up like backed into Marina. Marina doesn't know because she can't see. And she has thumbtacks in her feet. So she choked out whoever this is in front of her. And then Darby hits the coffin drop for the win. Now, I've heard people say, like, well, you know, one of those two guys, I know you didn't know who it was, but one of those two guys has a beard and the other one doesn't. That kind of should have been your dead giveaway. Let me tell you something. If I had thumbtacks in my feet and you just threw powder in my face, I'm choking you out. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. You know why? Because why you got me out here like this? Why you got me out here like this, man? Why I got thumbtacks in my feet? And there were close-ups on her feet of the thumbtacks. They were like in there. They were like in the creases and crevices of your toe. Listen. No, man, get me out of here. Yeah, I choked you out because I want to get out of here because I'm trying to go home now. Okay? So yeah, I choked you out. I did it on purpose. I wouldn't be shocked if she did it on purpose. That's all I'm saying. But a good match all the way around. After that, Tony Storm comes out and her and Stat go face to face and they just start throwing blows. That's how we go off the air. So a great show, another great show by AEW. Man, this is running up. Time flies, you know. Another great show by AEW. Now, all of this, they're said, like I said before, they're setting up two different shows now, right? They're setting up Wrestle Dream in a few weeks, but also next week is the Homecoming. They return, like I said before, to Daly's Place, which is why Homecoming. They're returning that Daly's Place for Title Tuesday. It's going to be on Tuesday. I'm not sure why it's on a Tuesday, but it's on Tuesday, Title Tuesday. And so they're building towards two different things. I think the two things I know that were announced were Mercedes is defending the TBS championship against somebody from Florida, and the GOA, well, the Demand and the Syndicate having their street fight. So, going to be a really tight show, and I think this show went long. I thought next week's going long. This week went a little long. Next week, I'm not sure. The interesting thing about next week, obviously Tuesday, means that they're going head to head against NXT again. Now, on the NXT side of things, let's cover this because I don't want to go into too deep into NXT like I just did for AEW because I didn't even mean to. I said I wasn't even gonna cover most of the show like that, but I did. But there were some key things that happened in NXT. Most importantly, because it still stays in the AEW range, is that Ricky Saints, aka Ricky Starks, has become the NXT champion, beating Oba Femi for the championship. Probably means Oba's going to get called up. I hope so, at least. See that happening. Uh, what else do we have? Nothing else really of note there. Uh, I think there were some good matches. I didn't watch pay per view. I just know that's the one thing of note that happened. Like I said, a couple of probably some good matches. I didn't tune in. All that happened at NXT No Mercy, I think, on Sunday. But more importantly than that is I think the stuff that kind of happened uh, on NXT, the show, Tuesday. So it was announced last week that they are doing I thought it was going to be a PLE or a pay-per-view or whatever. I thought it was going to be that. It's actually just an edition of NXT. Just like they have their branded shows here and there. So this one was going to be the NXT TNA Invasion. And it had the same Invasion logo, which I called that they would do it because they still own the IP. The same Invasion logo that they had in 2001, I'm sorry, for the WCW Invasion. Somewhere between then and this Tuesday, it was announced that the name would be changed to Showdown instead of Invasion. And the logo is pretty much the same as Invasion. It just says Showdown now, and it's the W, the big W instead of the big V, which is weird. But all right, whatever. This was done, I guess, because it offended, because of pressure and offensive. It offended Israel. Now, normally I would think that was a touch too far. The fact that it's actually on October 7th, and if you know, kind of, not even historically, but like what's kind of what happened, I think, was it last year or was it 2023? 2023. October 7th, 2023 in Israel is when they had the thing. We'll have to get into the thing, but the thing. The fact that the show was on October 7th and it's called Invasion, a little on the nose. So, kind of understand. Kind of understand that. Ain't gonna hold you. Still, same premise though. So on NXT this week, pretty much they announced prior to that there would be a 4-on-4, if I'm not mistaken, it's 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, one of the two. Survivor Series style elimination match for the men and the women's between NXT and TNA, as well as several other matches. There's going to be the Hardys versus Dark State for both sets of winner take all tag team title match, if I'm not mistaken. I think that they're doing a Mustafa Ali versus Ethan Page for the North American title, which is interesting. And then they went to name these teams. And it's really interesting what happened with these teams. So I'm trying to see let me see if I can find exactly what the teams are. Give me a second. You're watching while I look. Did we open the show with that? Because I didn't watch. Make sure I didn't watch. So the team captains for NXT are Ricky Saints, of course, NXT champion, right? And JC Jane, NXT Women's Champion. Here's where it gets interesting. The team captains for TNA are Mike Santana, still makes sense, and Kalani Jordan, who is an NXT talent, but she just won the TNA Knockouts Championship. So now she's the Knockouts. She's the TNA Women's Team Captain. Now, it sounds strange. If they choose to do it, there's an interesting direction that they could go here. And I'm curious to see if they choose to do it or not. Again, I won't be watching because I don't have cable, so I can't watch. But it's an interesting dynamic. I can't wait to hear about what happens. Because again, I think there's some interesting dynamics that they can do there. Now, on these teams, again, Mike Santana makes sense because you can't use the champion because the champion is Trick Williams, who is definitely an NXT guy. So that's interesting. On the team for the NXT women, I want to make sure I get this right because I don't see it where I'm looking, is Jada Parker, what's her name now? Jada Parker, The Inspiration, aka the Iconics, okay, so they went with the Summit last. Okay, there we go. So the women's team for TNA, make sure I get it right. For TNA, Kalani Jordan, who's an NXT talent, who's now the TNA champion. The Iconics, who since then have won the TNA Knockouts Championships, but are very known because of WWE. And Mara Sade, who was just in NXT a few months ago and just got released. All right. Cool, I guess. On the NXT side for the women, it's JC Jane, so Ruka, Lola Vice, Jada Parker. See, now it makes sense. Okay, I got it. I knew I was getting stuff confused. So this makes sense. The NXT team is mostly NXT women. The TNA team is literally former WWE acts and a current NXT act. That's a very interesting for that to be the representation of the TNA women's division is very strange. Because there are plenty of other ones that you could have put there. And I know they're the ones that are pushed in prominence right now, but there are plenty of other women there I know that you could have pushed as the TNA team, but whatever. The men's teams make a little more sense. Ricky Saints, Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Miles Bourne for the men on NXT. And for TNA, you got Mike Santana, Frankie Kazarian, Moose, Leon Slater. Definitely a TNA team right now. Somewhere it was announced, probably on TNA TV, either this week or last week, that Leon Slater and Javon Evans are going to have a match for the X Division title at Bound for Glory. And I think that might be the one of the pay-per-views I have not been to that I need to like check off my Infinity Stone checklist. I've been to Mania, been to a Rumble, I've been to a SummerSlam, I've been to All Out and All In. And I've been to Slammiversary. I might need to hit a Bound for Glory. I'm waiting for them to get close enough that I can go, or somewhere that I want to travel to. Traveling for a TNA show seems like a stretch, but it might be worth it. This year, not so much, but one of these years, it might be worth it. Need a Bound for Glory on my to check off my Infinity Stone. So next week is a big week for NXT. Next week is a big week for AEW. We are getting the Tuesday Night Wars once again. And if you remember the Wednesday Night Wars and the Tuesday Night Wars are a lot different. First of all, none of this matters in a rating sense for real, though I'm not gonna lie, I will toot my horn a little bit if AEW wins, but NXT probably will win. You know why? Because NXT is on CW, which is network television, so of course you're gonna have a much larger reach. Duh. But to be fair, they were winning sometimes when they would go head to head on USA. So okay, Sarah. Again, it's hard to make anything about these numbers when the way we watch is so different. Trying to hold it to that same standard and I don't know why wrestling fans we do that, but I guess it's just that holdover from the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars that we make such a big deal about the ratings, like that matters, because people watch everything differently now. So it's almost impossible to actually gauge what the ratings actually are. So I try not to give too much credence to that, because how can you, right? But we still do it because we're wrestling fans and we're sickos. Of course, you know where I will be tuned in, because of course I am, because I always am. Okay, what am I? Paid AEW shield. So I'll be tuned in to Title Tuesday at Daly's place for the homecoming. I will check out, like I typically do with WWE these days, I will check out the happenings on NXT, because I am intrigued to see how that goes, if there's any kind of swerves or any kind of anything of note to take from that. But I won't be watching. And more, if anything, I didn't watch it when I had cable. I kind of tried to watch the first few episodes, and after that, I was like, yeah, I don't care. And since then, like I said, I don't have cable anymore. I don't have YouTube. I don't have any kind of linear TV to watch on. With the same reason I don't watch SmackDown. Besides the fact that, again, I'm pretty much done with this company. But I'll be tuned into Homecoming to see what happens next. Major week in wrestling, like I said, it's not even big because it was big, but so much happened, and I think next week is going to be like another one of those two shows, and those are probably going to be very noteworthy. I have no interest in what's going on Raw, SmackDown. Again, you don't hear me report on those that much. If you want me to, I will. I'll find some stuff and I'll give my thoughts on it, but this is pretty much an AEW and at best NXT type show. So I have talked your ear off. This has gone about as long as I wanted it to go. So all that being said, thank you for tuning in again. Before I leave, let me make sure I say this again. Thank you for tuning in to the Black Phoenix Network, for tuning in to talk about wrestling, for tuning in to Manifesto Mondays, for tuning in to my What's Up Wednesday articles. Like I said, make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, tell anybody, spread the word. If you know anybody that would like to be interviewed, if you'd like to know anybody who would love to be a guest, a co-star, co-host, if you would like to be on the show, make sure you hit me up. I'm wide open. My DMs are wide open. So hit me up. Let me know. Leave a comment. Make sure you leave a comment. Engagement is the name of the game. Engagement. Can't say that enough. The more you engage, the more that we grow. All right. Again, officially, I can say this is a Substack. Substack is where I decided to start the show. But this podcast is also available on YouTube. And if you just want to listen, I have now made it available on Spotify. If you look up either the Black Phoenix Network or Talmbout Rasslin, you will see where it is available on Spotify now. So definitely got to make sure I get this audio right if you're just going to be listening, right? Hopefully it is. So with all that being said, make sure once you check me out on Spotify, I don't even really know how podcasts work on Spotify because I don't listen to many anymore. But I know you can leave a rating. So do that. Make sure you follow. Do that. Again, engagement. Engagement. So, with all that being said, let's get out of here. All right. Make sure you tune in next week. I would say I would do a countdown show next week, but like I said, with Homecoming / Title Tuesday for AEW and the Showdown show for NXT, I'm pretty sure we'll have a lot to talk about. So we'll be talking about that. I can tell you that for sure now. Plus anything else that happens of note in the wrestling world between now and then, I will definitely be sure to fill you in, because what we do here, we talk about wrestling. That's what we do. So, without further ado, with all that being said, I'm going to get out of here because I am your host, the untouchable J.R. Atkins, and this is your primary destination for wrestling conversation, talking about wrestling right here on the Pod Black Phoenix Network. All right. Again, available on Substack, YouTube, and now Spotify. So again, without further ado, thank you for tuning in. Have an enjoyable, wonderful weekend. And until next time, we are out.